Welcome to Hyper Music Talk.
Okay.
All right. Daniel Anto from Ladytron band, is amazing band. We start with the first question. Welcome. About your last brand new album. The new album is born from studio jams or isolated ideas?
I think a mixture, but a lot of studio jams. I invested in a lot of equipment, keyboards, things that I always wanted but I never had. Like maybe even some instruments that I wasn't interested in the past. And so I had all these new toys. And so there was a lot of it was very catalytic. For a lot of tunes, I started playing with certain instruments that I would just go, and I'd go, wait, hold on. And a tune would begin just from this play with these toys. And so it was, there was a lot of that in the studio. Also, I'm the kind of writer that ideas come to me walking down the street at very inconvenient moments. And so it's a combination of these things, I think, this album. Some of the songs were ideas I had away from the studio, and I went back in. And some of them are originated from jamming with these new toys. Basically, the equipment I got was unfashionable, really. It's kind of like when we started the band in the 90s, the equipment we used was cheap and unfashionable. It was not old 70s analog synthesizers. They were basically trash. You get it from a flea market or something, right? But that's what we had and that's what we used. And it's kind of like that again. I was like, okay, I remember these certain keyboards, and they're very, very cheap now. And they were kind of outside my, my personal aesthetic, very analog. But I remembered something, that I remembered a kind of modernity from when I was a teenager that doesn't really have a name. It was a way of making records that didn't really last very long, and it doesn't really have a name. And I started becoming fixated with, when I was 15 years old, if I could have any piece of equipment, right, regardless of the cost, what would I get? So I basically built this 1989 studio from scratch.
The first question, but the first question is linked with the other question, is very, very, very close to your explain. What is the percent of the analog and digital of the new album? I don't know.
It's probably, in terms of, I got a lot of early digital synths of different types. The analog thing is always there. It's it's us. It's always there. I think the bass end is coming analog a lot, but I got like several keyboards that I never used. I got before. I got a Roland D-50. I got a Korg M1. I got a Kawai K1, which is basically the best, the cheapest and most unfashionable and the most useful keyboard I've had in years. I love it. I used an R8, a Roland R8 drum machine, which obviously comes with samples. I wasn't using a real 808 this time. But the R8, I found it's so powerful. And I actually read the 808 state used the R8 rather
not
than
only in the box.
No, I didn't use anything in the box. Nothing.
Amazing.
No
Like
software, no
electromania.
VST, no subsynth. It's all hardware, and I think you can hear the difference.
Okay.
Everything just sounds better. Like, I mean, for example, one of my bandmates, they sent me a song and they'd programmed up the sequence, and they'd used a VST just for convenience of a Korg M1. And, you know, this is supposed to be this is a digital synth, right? It should sound the same. It just doesn't. I took the MIDI parts and like fed it into my M1, and the difference was incredible. And so when we actually, because we're using analog I/O, so even on these digital synths, everything is going through analog I/O and preamps and everything else.
Yeah,
Everything just sounded better. And like when I first, the studio engineer who ran the vocal sessions when we were recording the first vocals, he was saying, because he mixed the last album, he was going, this sounds mixed already. It had so much power and so much body to it. In the past, we used a mixture of things, but this time I said I didn't want to use any software synthesis at all. So really, that's the key. Rather than analog or digital keyboards, it's the fact we didn't use software. And I think that when you do that over an entire track, you really notice the difference. Something that you know, people look for in studio technology. They look to create a kind of an analog warmth artificially, where really it's right under their nose. You know what I mean? They have it already. You don't need to create it.
Yeah, but I remember, for example, the Gotham project in the past keep some parts, some sample from the live show. How much was recording in a live studio session, for example?
So I have my studio at home in Sao Paulo in Brazil.
Oh, wow.
And so most of it was recorded there. Then I come back to England and we record with the band together. We record vocals, we overdub, we rearrange things. We also did 1 week in London in Dean Street Studios, which is Tony Visconti's old studio, where he produced David Bowie's Scary Monsters. So it's like a sacred place, right in the middle of Soho. So we did, I think, 1 week or 10 days in there with Jim Abbiss, who mixed the album. He said, let's just go and have 1 week of chaos that because the album already sounded good. It was on its way. But he said, let's just go and just mess around with everything and experiment and turn things upside down. And it was very productive this week. I'd say very minor details, textural things that somehow really bring parts of the tracks to life. So that part of it was the finishing touches, before the mix, but it was very valuable. And it was kind of fun being in London, being in Soho in the middle of London, and it all seemed woven together with the atmosphere of the album and even the subject matter of the album. I felt like that we were in the theater in a way.
Wow. So what and why move you away from the minimal sound and of the yearly albums? So is different the results?
Well, we did. I mean, this happened very gradually. So the first album was very minimal, and it was intentionally so, in a way. It was also, we were recording on, we mixed on 24 track back then. The second album is still quite minimal. It's a little bit, it sounds a bit different to the first one. It sounds a little bit more digital, but it wasn't really. But then the third album, we made this big jump of we basically made a huge leap. I struggle to think of an example of an artist who made a jump like we did from album 2 to album 3. It's very, very unusual. And it was kind of anti-commercial as well. It was not, it was easier for us to make another electronic pop record because pop music was kind of moving towards what we did, yeah? But our reaction was no, we want to do something else. And also because we'd been playing live so much, the second album, that we started to crave different dynamics. It's still, if we listen to it now, it's still a relatively minimal sounding record. I think with the fourth album, it becomes more like a wall of sound. Not by design, really. I think it's just most of the things we've done have been instinctive. They haven't been planned. So to ask me why this sound went thicker, then I don't really know. I don't really remember. The fifth album, again, that's different again. That has a lot more layering, and it's a lot more of a sedate, a meditative record. And then we took this long break. So when we came back, we kind of just picked up from where we left. But the big difference with this new album is that it was completely written from scratch. We didn't have any music already. All of the other albums, including the first one, you have your whole life's ideas to take, right? The second album is a bit of a panic because it's like, oh no, we have to make a new record really quickly. It's classic. But the new one, it was literally, we had nothing. And I came up with the song, A Death in London. That was the first one. And I went, okay, this feels like the start of something. And the album really constructed itself around A Death in London. A Death in London is like the soul of the album. The second song was Icy Red. There's a lot of layers on that because I was so excited about all my new toys. So there's a lot of different sounds there for that reason. But in terms of like, yeah, it's just a different approach. The minimal approach works, but I feel like you can't do it forever. You have to crave different possibilities. So it's not to say that I wouldn't do something that minimal again. Then again, I mean, if even like within this album, it's really, the arrangements are more complex. So tracks begin minimally. Like A Death in London is extremely minimal at the beginning, and then by the time it reaches its crescendo, there's a hell of a lot of things going on there. Now, on the first album, we would have had drums, a monosynth playing bass, maybe an organ and a pad, maybe one lead instrument. It was very, very limited. But also we didn't feel compelled to add anything. And also we were working with limited instruments then. So we would have like a string synth, and it would be the same sound every time, a kind of Solina Seal type string synth. And we would always use that. It's still my favorite sound, polysynth sound. And we would have like a Roland, an SH09 or a SH2 playing the bass end. I had some, there was some digital on there as well. I had, oh no, actually it's that. There's an old Casio keyboard that I took some of the pads on. It was actually a cheap keyboard, but it was actually analog. So really we were working in a DIY, do-it-yourself way with limited tools. And sometimes that, that's a catalyst in itself. But now it's like, it's a different world. And I really wanted this album to touch places psychically that a more minimal approach can't. I wanted to push certain buttons that I understand subjectively, but I don't have a name for. Things that you can do to a piece of music, or you can do in a studio, and I know how to do it, but I couldn't explain it to somebody else how it's done. It's a very subjective set of qualities that I wanted this album to deliver. And with the tools that we have now, it was a lot quicker to reach that I would just sit back and go, whoa, something's happening here. And a lot of, I think that the other thing is I really like to do, especially on this record, I make sure that nothing is ever used once. So even though there's a lot of different sounds, everything reappears. Every drum sound, every idea, every synth sound, it always appears at least once somewhere else in the album. So the album has these kind of frames of symmetry. So something that happens on track 4 will happen on track 12. So there's little networks of related ideas within those sounds. Hopefully that makes sense.
I don't ask you about the AI, but I ask you is a double question. The last question is how to bring the studio sound inside into the live show. And the real last question is for my brand new book about the bass player and the bass world. How is important the bass line, and the low frequency in the production?
So the first part of the question, so the studio sound, it's really, we've done it various ways. At the beginning, we were limited by our tools, and we would have like a very scale, like on the first album, we actually had a DAT tape. That was, and we would have like the basic skeleton of whatever, and we would be playing these instruments, and these instruments never stayed in tune, and they broke down every week. Sometimes they actually caught fire, like we had synthesizers on fire on the stage. So then it was like we went, okay, for 2 albums we kind of worked like that. And then went with the 3rd album, we shifted more to a live sound, and we tried to do everything possible with what we had on the stage, and not rely on any kind of backing. And we've kind of worked in various versions of those approaches since. On the new one, because we're rehearsing right now, we started on Monday. So we are in the process of working out how we do this. The most basic thing is we're using the instruments that we use most on the album. We have an extra player with us now, Andrew, who is a solo artist, goes under the name Dialect. He's playing with us. He's a friend of ours, and so we're kind of we want it to be expansive, like the record, but also we want the elements of chaos. We want the chaos as well. We don't want it to sound exactly the same as the album, but we want it to feel the same as the album. But we want something unexpected to develop. Every time we play a show, I think after 6 months or 1 year, the evolution of the changes. But in terms of how important is the bass line and low frequency, it's very important, but I often
in the production.
Yeah, so it's very important, but I don't as a producer, I don't approach it as scientifically as some people do. With me, if it sounds right, it is right. I don't really go into the science of it. To be honest, I expect the mixer to do this.
Wow.
So the mixer will do things that I go, no, hold on, I'm doing the musical ideas. You sort out the frequencies. So I delegate that kind of thing to the mixer. If I'm mixing myself something, then I'll do it. But again, I wouldn't say my approach is very scientific when it comes to bass. It's more instinctive. And I think that what I was saying about the new record, one of the things about making sure it was all hardware is everything has more low end, everything has more sub, every sound across the board. So everything has this kind of this rounded, creamy, appealing natural sound to it. Even this very digital voices. But yeah, I think I leave. This is it. Frequencies and go. Okay, I can understand this, but leave it to the mixer to implement.
Daniel, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Grazie.
Thank you, and good luck for everything.
Thank you. Where are you? Are you in Milan?
Milan.
Yeah, I used to live there. You know.
Yeah, really?
Lived there for 5 years. Yeah, in Porta Venezia.
Well, Porta Venezia, yeah. But when you back in Italy, it's better if we meet and we talk.
Yeah, I'm going to be back this summer. We always come back and visit with the family.
Amazing.
Okay.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.